everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today I'm going to be talking all about my top 10 favourite books of 2022 so far. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. We are past the midway point of the year, so it seemed like a good time to talk about my favourite books I have read so far in 2022. And there has been a lot of books to choose from. By the end of June I had read 81 books, which is just amazing. I don't know how that's happened, but it has, and so there's plenty to choose from. Within those 80 books there have been 6 5-star reads for me, so they were automatic admissions to this list. The other 4 in my top 10, I had to really think about which of my 4-star reads have been head and shoulders above the rest, and on a different day, I'm sure that the order of this list could be different. There's certainly very big competition between certain places. I will also link in the description down below any videos where I've talked about these books in more detail, so that if you would like to know more, you can go and check those out. Most of them will be wrap-ups, but there is a review in there as well. So let's get straight into the top 10 and let's count backwards from my 10th favourite book of the year. In at number 10 we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is quite a recent read. I read it in June, but it was a very anticipated read for me. This has been on my mental TBR for as long as I can remember, and it's been on my physical TBR since Christmas. So I was really eager to read this one. I had heard it's a very good dystopian type of read, and I certainly did enjoy Never Let Me Go. This was actually my second Kazuo Ishiguro of the year, and second ever, and I really enjoyed Clara and the Sun as well, but I think I prefer this one slightly. So in brief, this is Kathy's story, and Kathy, who is now 31, looks back on her life at the idyllic Hailsham school and her relationship with Tommy and Ruth, her 2 best friends. And the dystopia in this is so subtle, and I love the way the hints were dropped throughout the book and we're not given the whole world at once. It's very deftly done, and I will definitely be reading more Ishiguro in the future. In at number 9 we have an audiobook. There are a lot of audiobooks appearing on this list, and this is not a book that I would ever have expected to appear on any top 10 of mine, but it is Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. I would not have read this book if there had not been a read-along of Pachinko, which was hosted by Gemma over at Gemma Books, and she encouraged me to pick up this book, and I'm very grateful, because I don't normally read historical fiction in that sense. I don't normally read multi-generational family sagas, and I genuinely thought that I didn't really like that type of book, but it turns out that I definitely did in this case. So this book follows at least 3 generations of a Korean family living in Japan. It follows the generations of this family from sort of very humble beginnings through the Second World War period and afterwards, and I thought this was a really strong book. I liked the third part of it less than the other parts, but it was just a really well written book, and I really felt like I learned something from it, and I also felt like it had really well done characters, most of whom I really cared to find out more about, and it definitely had some very sad moments as well. Yeah, Pachinko is a surprise entry at number 9 on this list. Just to say, before we go any further, I haven't included any rereads in this list because they probably would have been in top 10s of previous years. Anyway, in at number 8 is another audiobook, and that is the only classic on the list for this year so far, and that's Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens. I actually started this one last year, took a little break from it and ended up finishing it this year. But this was a wonderful audiobook, which I have spoken about in my audiobook video as well, and The voices were really spectacular. I would recommend this book if you would like to try something different by Dickens, because the other Dickens that I had read, such as David Copperfield and Great Expectations, sort of follow one character quite closely through their life, whereas this one has a massive cast of characters and they are all linked by the mutual friend of the title, however tenuously, and I really enjoyed the many plot lines in this, and it's definitely a classic that has gone right up to one of my favourite Dickens that I've read. It's so hard to pick a favourite Dickens, but yes, so that is in at number 8. In at number 7 is a very, very short book that I had out from the library, so I'm not able to show it. This book was so close to a 5-star read for me, and the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars, obviously wasn't feeling very generous that day, is because it is very, very short. And this is The Bucket by Alan Allberg, which is a lovely memoir of Alan Allberg's childhood, and it was told through the medium of some of his poetry, some of which I'd read before and some of which was new to this collection, I believe. There were illustrations from both his daughter and from Janet Allberg, who illustrated many of his famous children's books. And it also had little snippets of sort of non-fiction writing and memoir, and Alan Allberg spoke very eloquently and in a very captivating way about his childhood. I just thought this was a wonderful, wonderful book. I read it pretty much in one sitting, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who enjoyed Alan Allberg books as a child. Yeah, he writes so well, his poetry is lovely, and this book was just a really heartwarming and nostalgia filled read for me. So that is in at number 7. So the top 6 books all got 5 stars from me, and some of them would definitely be interchangeable on different days. So in at number 6 is going to be an extremely recent read right at the end of June, Julia and the Shark by Kieran Millward Hargrave and Tom de Freston. I just think that this book is wonderful in every way. The illustrations are just beautiful. They are absolutely stunning. I can't recommend the beauty of this book enough. There's lots of birds and sharks and lighthouses throughout. The only colour in the book is yellow. I just thought it was so beautifully illustrated, but equally the illustrations match up wonderfully to the beautiful story as well. So this follows Julia, who goes with her mum and dad to live in a lighthouse in the Scottish Highlands, and her mother, it deals really sensitively, I felt, and well with Julia's mother's mental illness and how the family copes with that, and how the family copes with the obsession in the family with finding this shark, which is part of Julia's mother's work, but also sort of a personal quest, really. It's just a really, really thoughtful and well-written book, and I read this in a day. I would highly, highly recommend it to anybody, even if you don't love picture books or you don't love middle grade. I think this is a fantastic book, and I would certainly buy it for any children of middle grade age that I know, because it's stunning. So yeah, Julia and the Shark in at number 6. In at number 5 was another audiobook listen, and this is the start of a few books that I read for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. And this one was Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. Sorrow and Bliss follows Martha, and she tells us her story first in the present day, where she and her husband are separating, and then looking back over her entire life and how it has been affected by her mental health struggles and eventual diagnosis. I just thought this book was brilliant. I was expecting it to be really sad, but actually there's so much humour infusing this book, and I really, really enjoyed the humour. I loved the family in this book. Martha's sister is really funny, and Martha's wider family just create some of the most hilarious moments in this book. And I just absolutely loved reading this or listening to this. But interestingly enough, when I discussed what I thought I wanted to win the Women's Prize, I was really rooting for Sorrow and Bliss. But I would now say that the next entry on the list has actually gone up in my estimation, whereas Sorrow and Bliss has stayed the same. So I always love a book that has a lasting impact on me and that I think about afterwards. And I wouldn't say I've thought about Sorrow and Bliss as much as I've thought about the number 4 book on this list, which is Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. I also listened to this on audio, but I have since acquired a copy, which I'm really pleased with, because this will be a definite reread for me. Quite the opposite to Sorrow and Bliss, this is an absolutely sprawling epic by Maggie Shipstead, and it's about the life of Marion Graves and her brother Jamie Graves, right from their birth onwards, and there is no detail that goes to waste in this book. I think everything in this book needs to be paid attention to, and the payoff is just so great. So there's also a modern day storyline in this with an actress called Hadley Baxter. Really enjoyed those parts too, because we got snippets of what had happened to Marion in the past, and it all just came together in such a satisfying way. And we follow Marion and also Hadley playing Marion as Marion becomes a female aviator and attempts to circumnavigate the globe and complete the Great Circle. And it's absolutely fascinating, the journey. This book has risen in my estimation, and I do really wish that this had won the Women's Prize for fiction, but sadly not. But I think it's a wonderful epic, and again, not the type of book that I would normally pick to read, but just wonderful. Really good. Maybe I should start reading more sweeping epics because it's fantastic. In at number 3, we have the final book that I read for the Women's Prize, and this was read for the long list, and it was robbed of a place on the shortlist, sadly, and that was Careless by Kirsty Capes. I've mentioned this so many times on my channel, and I do have a full review of this book, but it follows Bess, who is a 15-year-old girl who finds out in the opening chapter that she is pregnant. It's a first-person narrative by Bess, and she goes back in time to tell us about how she came to be in this situation, and then follows her with her dilemmas about what to do. She also talks a lot about her best friend Ishal. I think Bess and Ishal were just wonderful characters, and the sort of characters that I wanted to know how they were getting on afterwards, and when I wasn't reading the book I thought about them. It also deals with the care system in the UK, because Bess lives with a foster family. This was a buddy read with Gemma and Dani, and we spent a lot of time very angry with Bess's foster mother. And Bess's narrative voice comes across as really real and gritty, and is full of the details of her life. So yeah, I absolutely loved listening to this, and I will enjoy a reread of the book now I have it. Again, I didn't think that this was a book for me, but it really proved me wrong, and I absolutely love this book. It could potentially have got to number 2 on my list, but the next one just about pips it. So Careless by Kirsty Capes at number 3. In at number 2, we have a wonderful book that I would recommend to everybody, Fight Night by Miriam Taves. Now, I read this one for a tandem read-along. I actually listened to it, for a tandem listen-along, and I was sent this copy by Faber as an ad PR copy. The audiobook is fantastic as well, and perfectly matches the narrative voice, in my opinion. Yes, this one is narrated by 9-year-old Swiv. Swiv lives with her heavily pregnant mother and her grandmother, who is just one of the best characters I have ever encountered in books. And Grandma is just absolutely hilarious with her life knowledge and her wisdom and her catchphrases as well. Bombs away, Swiv! Oh, it's just so good. So Swiv has been kicked out of school for fighting, and she is being homeschooled by Grandma, and Grandma's homeschooling lessons are just absolutely priceless. This book made me laugh out loud on occasion, and it also did make me cry. I can't explain how great this book is, but try it for yourself and I don't think you will be disappointed. So this was my second favourite book of the year. So in at number 1, this will be no surprise to anybody who's watched my channel in the past few months. Number 1 favourite book of the year so far is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Dewar. I read this one for the Booktube Prize, and I'm so grateful to the Booktube Prize for giving me the group with this book in it, because I just think it's wonderful. So this book is about an ancient text, an ancient lost book that connects 3 wonderful different timelines. The first being way back in the past at the Siege of Constantinople. We follow 2 characters on opposing sides there. In the present day, our setting is a library, and we follow 2 characters there as well, and also a group of children who are going to perform a play of this lost work. We follow Constance as well, who is on board a spaceship in the far-flung future. And she has also discovered parts of this manuscript and is absolutely intrigued by it. So I loved the way that this book was written. I loved all of the characters, and I thought all 3 perspectives were wonderfully done. And as with Great Circle, there were revelations in other timelines as to what had happened in previous timelines, which is something that I always really love. So yeah, I don't have any more words to explain how brilliant Cloud Cuckoo Land is. I would definitely say to people, do not be put off by the size of this. There's really good spacing in this book. It's not a heavy, well, it is physically heavy. It's not a heavy 600-page book. It's just beautifully done, in my opinion. So this was my top book of the year so far, and it would take a lot for me to not have this in my top 10 at the end of the year. So here's hoping that I read some more great books, but I can't see anything toppling Cloud Cuckoo Land. We will see. So we have reached the end of this top 10, and we've reached the end of this video. I have loved all my reading so far in 2022. There have been so many great books to choose from, and I'm hoping for more in the second half of the year. Thanks very much for watching today. Please do give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And do comment down below. I would love to hear from you. What have been your favourite books of the year? Have you read any of these books, and did you like them as much as I did? I'd love to chat with you in the comments. I hope you've all read some really good books this year and enjoyed them as much as I've enjoyed this 10. And I hope to see you all again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.